Good morning, class. Today we are going to talk about the spread of Christianity in the Middle Ages. Christianity spread because of a large diaspora of Jews outside Palestine. Christianity filled a spiritual void left by the Stoics. It was a monotheistic religion, and there was a historical person at the root of the story, and had a rigid moral code to follow. Now, the Apostolic Church was given the mandate to preach the gospel. The Council of Jerusalem approved the practice of circumcision. Christian community grew in Rome, and Peter and Paul died during persecution. Now, persecutors of Christians were people such as Nero and Marcus Aurelius and Emperor Decius, also Diocletian. But these persecutions only strengthened Christianity. The apostles believed that the human race had fallen due to Adam and Eve, and that God sent his son to earth to try and fix it. And in Carolingian society, one of which in Christianity it never existed because of poverty, peasants worked on family farms, they settled in founds near rivers. The peasants became, as Christianity spread, the peasants became the lower clergy, and the towns became better. In the Carolingian administration, the court was the emperor's own family. They were principal magistrates, and they were those were referred to as first among equals, and they oversaw accounts. The seneschal empowers the states, empowers the estates. Chamberlain, I can't read that. They had an assembly, they had a theocracy, and it was a check upon the magistrates. The monarchy, on the other hand, defeated the Lombards. Charlemagne was crowned by the Pope, again more Christian influence, and they expanded north and east. And that brings up Charles Martel, who in 714 took control of the governments. He was known for his ruthlessness and his political intrigue, and he used missionaries' energy to his advantage. Next came the Do-Nothing Kings. They brought rise to the Carolingian society that we just talked about. There was physical underdevelopment. They had to rely on gift-giving to keep power. They were dividing the inheritance of Charlemagne. It became unstable. The Carolingians became the hereditary leader, and these guys had luck. And then there was Pope John XII, who coerced Romans to elect his son Pope. Revived the Holy Roman Empire, and the German king recognized him as the only pope. Which brings us to Formosus, who remembered for his posthumous life. He served as his advisor. He was excommunicated, then elected pope, but when he died, his body was condemned. And Pope Nicholas I was elected in the year 38. It was during what was known as the Photian Schism, because he asserted that he was divinely given universal powers of the Roman Church. And the Church also had trouble from within. Luck ran out. Louis the Pious couldn't run the Holy Roman Empire. The empire stopped expanding. It began to disintegrate. The empire was partitioned, and transporting of goods became pointless. And thus the society became maritime. But the brakes of Mediterranean trade began to resume. There was piracy, all this led to an economic boom. There was it became a multi-ethnic empire, and the communes were developed, leading to urban republics. The peasants began to gain power in the society, began to have their own society. Their diet was constant. They had access to fresh water. which was very important. There was division in labor between the sexes. There were restrictions placed on women's rights. The agricultural cycle governed their lives. Religious practices deviated. Their homes were small, dark, and filthy. There was a distinction between the classes of peasants. They lived on demesnes. They owed eggs on Easter. And the manor was a fundamental unit of society. Then came the Anglo-Roman realm, where they adopted brute force and something I can't read, and in the Battle of Hastings. The realm stunted strictly. There was little subinfeudation. Tenants and chiefs, or the professions, became professionalized the maintenance of their own territories. And they were generous and dismissive of the church. And centralization and power became centralized. And in France, run by the Capetians, they seized the ecclesiastical revenues. They're grown. So I can't read that. The aggrandizement happened through marriage. Then there was the First German Empire. As Carolingian decreased, the Duke's strength increased, led to the rise of Otto the Great, who was supported by the German Church. He defeated the Magyars, he Christianized pagans, and he gave an imperial title. And Otto II and Otto III struggled against rebellions. And it all inspired the Tonian Renaissance. Now, St. Benedict was also there. He was the most influential. His role emphasized monasteries and missions. In both he came. He differentiated and categorized philosophy and liberal arts. Philosophy divided into practical and theoretical. This was known as the consolation of philosophy. It gave rise to the Fortune's Wheel. Cassiodorus was the master of office. He reconciled the Roman and Germanic cultural traditions. He translated early Christian texts. He made commentary on Bible chapters. And his emphasis was on proper and complete understanding of the scriptures. Monasticism in the East began to rise. Life in isolation was only optional, by the way. The other option was to join the spiritual community. There was asceticism, and there was wars. Then there was a period of reform, recovery, and persecution and favor. The Diocletian and Constantine decentralized the government. Emphasis shifted from conquest to defense. They altered the rural system. They paid the peasants were now paying in livestock, and Constantine himself converted to Christianity, which brought us into the 3rd century, and with it came many problems. For instance, agriculture was weakening, and industry was weakening. There was inflation. The coinage was debased. There was an autocratic government. There was disease and poverty, civil wars, fear and flight, depression, and Germanic tribes, which brought along the Roman government. In the age of the 5 good emperors, and they were Nerva, Hadrian, Antonius Pius, Trajan, and Marcus Aurelius. And during this stories, there were honestores, senators, equestrians, curiales, army vets. You had to be freeborn for 2 generations to become a citizen. There were humiliadores, which was everyone else but slaves, and slaves were still considered to be property. And continuing on in that society, the economy grew as the empire grew. Family became the basic unit of society, and the wives were the exception. They had no power, I think is what that says. But the prosperity we went under had a cost. It brought us to the rise of wars, and civil wars too. But in the end, the Roman Empire society was the largest, it was the wealthiest, it was the most diverse, and the most stable. Whereas the Carolinians had only capitularies, they made the rules. The monks and the clerics were the effective. And the Benedictine form of monasticism came to rise under them. From all that came the Franco-Papal Alliance, where Pepin was crowned and annotated. The Frankish kings were religious and responded to defend the papacy under this alliance. Learning was invented by Benedict Pascal, was improved upon. It was done by having school at Canterbury and Journey to Rome. And finally, there was Boniface. He converted and reconverted to Christianity. He sought advice from popes and bishops. He was worried about the validity of his baptism, and he established a clear institutional structure in the church. This has been PUP News. See you next time.